Greetings to everyone, friends. The Committee of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine has supported the draft law on the employment of foreigners, despite warnings about social consequences, social tension, and the possibility that things may not go as planned. In simple terms, what's happening? One of the committees of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine is promoting the legal employment of foreigners, making it easier to access the labor market in Ukraine, essentially granting more rights to these very foreigners and simplifying the entire procedure. But at the same time, for some reason, no one is asking the question of how not to bring foreigners into Ukraine right now, even during the war. And how can we fix the situation where millions of Ukrainians are abroad, while citizens of Ukraine in Ukraine have fewer rights and freedoms than foreigners? We'll talk about all of this today. Watch the full video and support with likes, comments, and subscriptions. Thanks to everyone. In general, this is a very interesting trend when, as I already said, I'll repeat myself, citizens of Ukraine, while being in Ukraine, have fewer freedoms than foreigners. Just imagine such a situation. Could anyone have thought about this 10 or 20 years ago, and is this even possible in any country of the European Union? I think absolutely not. The government will launch a state job portal for foreigners, allowing electronic applications and combining 2 permits into one. You used to need 2 permits, one for residence and one for employment. Now only 1 permit is required. What's interesting about this? The Committee on Human Rights, Deoccupation and Reintegration of the Temporarily Occupied Territories of Ukraine. The Committee on National Minorities and Interethnic Relations, at its meeting on January 15, 2026, considered the draft law on amendments to certain laws of Ukraine regarding the employment of foreigners and stateless persons. This is the registered draft law number 14211, dated November 14, 2025. Submitted by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine and alternative draft laws. In general, it's a very interesting trend when we're told that international recruiting in Ukraine is impossible and the military enlistment officers have to catch people on the street, right? You have to terrorize your own citizens, you have to close the borders for them, and then say that they're damn draft dodgers. We also know the number is huge, hundreds of thousands. People who deserted their units or left the army, 80% fled from training centers. If we are to believe Member of Parliament Kostenko, these people also leave Ukraine's economy. A huge number of these Ukrainians leave the country legally or illegally so that one day they won't be mobilized or bussed off. It already depends on how lucky they get. At the same time, the legislation is developing at a crazy pace, legislation that gives foreigners more and more rights. Even now, a foreigner who comes to Ukraine will be a better worker for one simple reason. Because if it's a man, he'll go work at the post office or in construction or somewhere else, he'll go and work. He'll know he doesn't need any reservation, regular or economic, he just works and gets paid. If it's a citizen of Ukraine, then the entrepreneur will understand that this is an unstable employee, because tomorrow 2 vans might come, they'll grab him and kidnap him and take him to the territorial recruitment center, and his employer will never see him again. So in that case, who will the employer prefer? The one who came from abroad and will work for a longer period of time, maybe even for less money? Or the one he hired today, then spent 3 weeks training, and on the 4th week he was bussified and taken away? Of course, they will prefer the first ones. Meanwhile, Ukrainians will have just one option left, to go to the front and defend the new residents of Ukraine. In the same way, these newly arrived residents of Ukraine will eventually be able to easily get a Ukrainian passport. Because there, the law on multiple citizenship also comes to the rescue, which for some reason was even considered, signed, voted on, and has already come into force in Ukraine during the war. Although this is definitely not the issue that needs to be considered during the war. At the moment when what's happening in Ukraine is happening, that's it. There are a lot of different ones there. There are a lot of pitfalls and limitations. But in this draft law we're talking about now, the good thing is that it has a single digital electronic registry. But after that, there are still a lot of questions, a lot of contradictions. And contradiction number one, and the main drawback, is actually competition in the labor market. Someone says that there is no competition in the labor market in Ukraine, that there aren't enough workers, and so on and so forth. What's actually happening if Ukraine truly lacks workers? Of working hands, of those who want to work. Let me remind you that millions of internally displaced persons in Ukraine are still not being hired. So, that's not true, because if the competition were sufficient, then salaries would probably, increase a little, and not what is happening now. At the same time, the competition will become even greater. As we have already discussed, at least among men who, for example, come from abroad, from somewhere like Bangladesh, it doesn't really matter where they come from, to Ukraine. They will have one big advantage. They cannot be drafted, and they are allowed to travel abroad. Ukrainian men lack these rights in Ukraine. And this, by the way, is the very fact that citizens of Ukraine have fewer rights and freedoms in Ukraine than foreigners do. This actually looks very strange. On the market and labor competition, the project provides simplified access to employment for a wide range of foreigners. And this, first of all, will increase competition for jobs. And we know that foreigners will actually have an advantage over Ukrainian men, at least in the fact that they are not subject to mobilization. They can't be kidnapped on their way to work and taken to the territorial recruitment center, and they will definitely show up for work. Second, this will raise pressure on the market's low-skilled segments. Where they pay little now, they'll pay even less later. If someone believes that no one will work for $150, $200, $300, or $400, they're mistaken. You're mistaken for one simple reason. These people can easily come to Ukraine, work, during this time get some residence permits, then in Ukraine get visas to European Union countries and then go there, and they will work for a certain period. This could become a pathway to Europe if Europe doesn't address it. Or even simpler, in the future they will get access, thanks to the law on multiple citizenship, to a simplified process for obtaining a Ukrainian passport. Any kind of corruption scheme can also be attached there to sell these passports, so that these people can then also use the privileges of a Ukrainian passport. They also won't be mobilized into the armed forces of Ukraine. And you'll see that in this case, these corruption schemes will grow like mushrooms after the rain, because a huge number of people from all over the world want to get into the European Union, and with a Ukrainian passport, it's very easy to do. Third, it will lower wages in some industries. Salaries in Ukraine are not very high, to put it simply. And if they start bringing in foreign migrants, these salaries could drop even more, and then Ukrainians will be left with nothing at all, except for either joining the army or somehow going abroad to work in Europe. So, regarding the social and budgetary consequences. The media points out that, firstly, expanding foreigners' access to the labor market may affect the social protection system. Secondly, expenses for employment services, medical assistance, and various benefits will increase. Tensions may also occur in local communities where resources are scarce. If more foreigners are brought in there than needed, then the situation there will only become more tense. I have just one question. Why? Are we completely ignoring international recruiting? This issue is being completely pushed to the background, although this is one of the effective solutions to the issue and problem of forced mobilization in Ukraine. But they are preparing the infrastructure so that foreigners can easily obtain passports, buy land, come and work in Ukraine easily, and so on, and the doors are open for them. Why? Do foreigners in Ukraine have more rights than Ukrainian citizens? Maybe I don't understand something? Share your opinion in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Because it seems to me that Ukraine is slowly ceasing to be Ukraine and is starting to become, some kind of proxy country where you can come, get a passport, and go to Europe. And it's hard to imagine what will happen to Ukraine in 5, 10, or 15 years. What do you think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks and see you.